And there we go. So yeah, greetings everyone. Greetings everyone. Here with you is Jean Dodier Uwizeyimana, your one and only youth holistic life coach and motivational speaker from Arise Inspirations, empowering you to face the world. Today we're going to be talking about a topic dear to my heart. We're going to be talking about Africa, basically everything African, and talking about Africa, the past, the present, and the future. But we're going to look at it using the lenses of a young person, using the lenses of a young person. The question we're asking today is there hope for Black youth or African youth? Is there hope for African youth? That's the question that we are posing today. And my guest here today is Ndumiso. Ndumiso Kane, who is an unapologetic African and believes everything African. And he's an author as well, and he's going to be sharing with us some of his views on the topic of today. So gather around, everybody. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Ndumiso, welcome to the show, my brother.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sean. Thank you very much. How are you doing,
Yes,
man?
yes, we are honored to have you today as we're going to be discussing about Africa and looking at issues pertaining to Africa. And a lot have been going on, a lot have been happening as we can looking at the events that just took place all over the world. There is a march that more the protesting taking place. You know, the Black Lives Matters campaign, and everyone is talking about how it's important that a Black person should have their right, that a Black person should have the same respect as everyone else. And that is what we're talking about today, especially that today is June 16th, a day on which we're commemorating, many young people who sacrificed a lot on the behalf of the freedom, some little freedoms that we enjoy today here in South Africa. Now, what is your analysis, and Dumiso, looking at the events that transpired of late all over the world?
Okay, since you've started up with Black Lives Matter, which is something that is happening in America, so we actually need to understand the situation in America for them to call for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
It's actually it's a cry that is trying to answer what they are not getting. And for a human to say my life matters, that actually says the initial treatment that you are getting shows that your life does not matter.
Yeah.
And then it's not only it's a response to racism. And this response to racism is what is making Black people in America say their life matter. But then the problem is Martin Luther says riots and protests are actually the language of the unheard. So meaning you are in a situation where no one wants to listen to you, then you decide to protest.
Yeah.
The question we'll be asking ourselves is, why do human beings need to protest? Why do we need to be active on the streets? Why do we need to behave as if we are unheard?
Yeah.
The general sense that the Black person must know is that white supremacy does not regard Black people as human beings. That's the initial premise of why we need to protest, why we need to have June 16. It's because initially we are not regarded as human beings. So for time immemorial, we've been trying to tiptoe around the idea or trying to show white people that we are human beings. So we've tried. We try education. We come out still. We're not considered as human beings. We try to do music. We try to sing with high notes. We try to dance as much as we can, trying to show that we are human. But because the system that is governing us does not regard us as human beings. So when the Black Lives in America are saying Black Lives Matter, it's coming from the fact that the founding fathers of America, Thomas Jefferson, one of them, the third president of America, he writes one of the beautiful, something that you can read and say, this is something beautiful written by a president. He says, all humans are created equal, and they all have an endowed right to pursue happiness and all these things. And you might be thinking that he's talking about black people included. No, because a few sentences down in his speech, it does say that black people must not think that they're equal to white people. So that when he says all humans are created equal, he's not referring to black people. So black people, yes, black people then get caught up in these statements, and they think that these statements are all inclusive. Now, the process of you to get to a point where you have to sit on someone's neck for 8 minutes until they die, it shows that you don't believe that they're human.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that to your fellow brother. So the initial, when we talk of the issue of racism, it's so sad that most of our black people get the definition of racism from white people, which is an issue of prejudice. Racism has nothing to do with prejudice, because prejudice is something that has to do with someone who is irrational about hating you. They don't even know you, but they decide to hate you. They don't know you, they don't know your qualities, but it's irrational. So when you say prejudice, you've actually lost the plot, because racism is well thought out. Racism is intelligent. Racism is calculative. Racism has been set down and it has been planned. It's a survival system for the white race and the white supremacist race. So what they do is
it's designed basically to be in that way, to say that, okay, these people finally treat because we want to always be above them in a particular way.
Yes, so it's by design. It's not by chance. It's not a guy that you meet in the streets and he doesn't like you. No. You see, if you see, this is how racism works. When white people meet each other in the mall, they don't see the reason to smile at each other. But when they see a black person, they smile. Why are they smiling? Why are they grinning at us? I mean, even us as black people, we meet each other, we just cross because I don't have any business with you. But because even as a definition that says racism is an emotional thing, it's just you making you feel how you feel about people. So when you meet black people, smile at them so that they may think that you like them. But racism is deeper than that. Yeah. Racism is crime. It's so deep that the person that is smiling at you can actually be plotting your death. But this is why now when black people are asked, so what do you want white people to do? We just want an apology. Why? Because you think that racism is just an emotional thing. It's someone who is just prejudiced towards me irrationally. Yes. So that's why you need to prove yourself that you are human, because you think that this person thinks that of you irrationally. But racism is calculated. Racism is men sitting down on a table and planning on how to take over Africa as if it has no human beings, cutting it up into small little countries. That's racist ideology.
That is racist ideology. My brother, it's very interesting that we're beginning with this, what's happening in the world today, because when you look at the events that it transpired in America of late, it is not different from what the youth of June 16 and in the 70s died for. They were also treated in a similar manner. So we're not seeing much change in the world. We're not seeing the change of that mentality that you are talking about. However, today we're going now to drive towards the point of answering this question. Is there hope for the African youth? Is there hope for the African youth? We ask this question in a time where people whom we would say that youth of the 70s are now in leadership, are now in parliament. And the change that they prayed for, they fought for, is not clearly evident. Not to say that there is nothing, not to say that nothing has changed, but we still see some of the things that were happening then happening even now. And also the system that we inherited, it does not do justice to the Black child, to the African child. So to you, Ndumiso, to you, what is freedom? And can we say that we are free? Looking at it in a South African context, and also looking at it in an African context, looking at a Black person as a whole, wherever they may be. Is there such a thing as freedom? How do you put it?
Currently, the Black child cannot even talk of freedom. We're not free. We're not free. There's one statement that I like from Dada Idi Amin. Idi Amin says, yeah, you have the freedom of speech, but I cannot guarantee you the freedom after your speech. The only time when you see that someone is free is when they are free to speak and even be free after they've spoken. Africa is only free until they say something that upsets the powers that be. So we get things imposed on us because we are not free. They understand that we are not free because a man that is free before his speech, during his speech, and after his speech. So Africa cannot, at this point, say we are free. Going back to the generation of 1976, the one that you are referring to be our leaders now, what you need to understand is a great majority of them in 1976 didn't even know what Tsietsi Mashinini was talking about. A great majority of them. A great majority of them benefited from the fact that there was a group of young people that had an ideology that they were uprising on. As the same thing, go back again when Ghana got its independence in the 60s and all these other countries followed suit. Many of them had no ideology why they wanted to be free. So this is why when Kwame said it's imperative that we forget about individual independence. At this moment, when everyone is still excited about being independent, let's unite and be independent, all of us at once. But because the other gents were just being pushed by peer pressure, they didn't even know why they wanted to fight for freedom. They said, nah, we also want to enjoy being presidents of our small countries. And then with time, we start to unite. So you see that the ideology that Ghana had when it was going for a liberation, it was thinking uniting Africa and making it one. But when you got to the African Union to present this deal, this idea that he had and said, let's draw Africa into one thing and we pool resources, all of us at once. We pool our freedom, all of us at once. We pool our military base, all of us at once, and we protect the whole continent. But because many of them, the only thing that they were thinking about is their careers. I mean, you probably, and many of them were aspiring to be teachers, and independence was giving them an opportunity to be presidents. So you are taking someone coming from a background of just being someone who aspired to say, if I grow up, this is the career that I want to pursue. None of them were thinking about they're going to be state leaders or presidents. So all of them are with this idea now that they are going to be presidents. So all of them are thinking, nah, Kwame, you see, the problem is if we say, let's unite Africa, who's going to be the president of Africa? So rather enjoy my small little Zambia, rather I enjoy my small little Malawi, rather I enjoy my small little South Africa, I'll enjoy my small little Zimbabwe, my Tanzania. And then at some point we can talk about this unity. Why? Because they all knew that they are going to inherit slaves. When we got I call it flag independence. When we got flag independence, all these countries inherited slaves because we are moving from a point of being slaves. So our presidents became the slave masters in courts.
Oh, no. Yeah. And that's the truth that hurts. Yes.
They never inherited citizens because citizens, citizens, you know that they have the same values as you, but they inherited the same people that the colonialists left. They never empowered their people to the extent of giving them the same ideology that they had on why they wanted Africa to be liberated. So they inherited, they became the second boss. You change just the skin. The same person that in the show becomes the same idea. This is why in most countries we're still using the Dutch Roman law. You've been independent. Why are you using the Dutch Roman law? It's because your idea of independence was not holistic. The only thing that you saw was the State House. You saw what you call this, the motorcade that they receive. You saw yourself being a president for life, receiving a salary for life. So that was a good deal for them. But for the citizens, nothing changed, because when they got in, they never thought of the citizens. They thought of what was going to be good for them. So when it comes to 1976, when the young people were standing up, leaders cannot be voted for. We can vote for parliament. A leader, you never vote for a leader. Tsietsi did not need to be voted for. Tsietsi knew what was in him that said this is not right. He organized what he thought was relevant for him to organize, so that there be a march against what he saw, that this would not produce a better Africa in the future. Yeah. So a leader does not think about his current situation. A leader thinks of the legacy that he's going to leave.
Looking forward into the future. And that is the vision that they had, to be able to say that Africa should be free. But you are saying that now, that these leaders, and you're referring to the country of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, that basically where they failed is that they did not share the agenda with the citizens to say that, listen, Africans, we want to be united, and this is the reason why. And you also highlighted something whereby other leaders now feared that should Africa be one, they will lose their power. But it's so heartbreaking to see and learn that the same mentality is still reigns even today. To say that the reason why people cannot come together is because they want to keep what's theirs, to keep themselves into that little box given to them by the previous colonial masters, to say that, okay, this is my Burundi, this is my Burkina Faso, this is my Togo, this is my Ghana, this is my Gambia. But what about Africa as a whole? Yeah. Now you touched a little bit, and then you were still adding to that point. But if you could include this, that you touched a little bit on independence. So independence, in reality, in the light of what is happening, it's a myth. It does not exist. Can we really say that we are independent, being where we are and looking at the things as they are? What are your thoughts on that?
We can't say that we are independent. If you want to see if whether we're independent or not, why is it every time when we inaugurate a president, they need to go to Britain, they need to go to France? Why are they going there? Do they need to meet the Queen on their first day of office, their first month in office? Why are they going back to England? So you see that, because we were given the idea that we won our independence. We never won this independence. We got to a point where the wars that were happening in Africa were no longer profitable for France, Britain, and all these other guys. So they thought of a new method, and they said, no, guys, let's rethink our strategy. There's no need for us to post ourselves as leaders in these colonies. There's no need for Britain to have a British prime minister in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in Malawi. Let them have the presidents, but let's run the economy. So we were excited about the idea of being in the State House. We took that deal. So this is why every time when we vote for a president, he needs to go again to the master and state his allegiance to say, I am still going to keep the system running as you left it running. I'm not going to disturb the plan that you have set forth. So we moved from imperialism, colonization into neo-colonialism, where now you see the hand that is pulling the strings. You don't see it. It's pulling the strings from you. You don't get to see it. So what you see is your own, like you see your own president, same skin. This person is black. Why is he doing this? But the real truth is it's happening behind the scenes. So this is where now we introduce into neo-colonialism. Sorry, I don't have electricity, so I'm trying to keep my phone on.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. All right.
So because now we are living in a neo-colonialistic state, we don't get to decide. It's not that South Africa doesn't see the need of Zimbabwe or Zambia or Malawi or Mozambique or Swaziland but the deal that is signed behind closed doors, those behind closed doors meeting, those are the most important meetings.
Those
That's
we don't
where,
know.
yeah,
Those are not reported in 11 in 7 o'clock news.
yeah, in your news, those are the meetings. The rest of the things that you hear that come live, those things don't matter. The only thing that matters is what's happening behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
if you are told as South Africa, remember during the liberation struggle, there was a point where Zimbabwe as a government refused to help South Africa because Britain also was putting pressure that if you help them, this is what's going to happen. So these are the pressures that they get as presidents. So you're sitting right now, you're the president of SA, you're being told that if you help Zimbabwe, I'm going to pull out of South Africa. So South Africa has to come up with a statement that is live now. The president has to bring up, and then he sends an apology and he says, we sympathize with the people of our neighboring countries. We understand that you're going through a lot, but they would never say this is our solution. This is what we're going to do about this, because they've been told behind the scenes that we are punishing this country for doing this. We are punishing Zimbabwe for taking land, because if all of you in Africa take land, we lose our advantage over Africa. So we need to punish Zimbabwe until all African countries can see what it is like to go against us.
Making basically Zimbabwe an example to say that this should not be done. And yes, while we're still on that point, my brother, this is something that I have observed as well. You live in these countries, your Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa. You get to learn a few things as you observe. Even other countries like Congo, when you learn the history and the study, we are at the point where we are not our brother's keepers. We are not our brother's keepers, and I'm not talking about that on citizens level. I'm talking about the kind of systems that we are in. We've been boxed into these boxes called countries, and we are not united as we should be as Africa. But that is a point that we're going to come to, as we're going to be discussing also about is it democracy really working for Africa? Is it working? Does it serve us, or we need a better system or a better way of running the countries and the country?
Okay. That one is very easy, my brother. If democracy was working, you and I won't be having this conversation. So democracy is not working. Democracy is not working in Africa. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But then to come back to the why are we not our brother's keepers?
Yeah.
I have a simple allegory that I use. You are in take for instance, you are in a house. Let's say there are 10 children in a house, and a black mamba comes into the house. Now, the behavior of children in the house is no longer their normal behavior. They know what to do, but because there is a black mamba, these are brothers and sisters, but because there is a black mamba, a little snake inside the house. If you come as a parent and start disciplining or wanting to beat your children, why are they standing on top of chairs and tables and stoves? It's because you have failed to understand the problem of your children.
All right. So
what we're trying to do right now as Africa is we're trying to solve our issues with a snake inside the house. We are all failing to acknowledge that you and I are failing to be each other's keepers because of the snake in the house. When you tighten the resources, I begin to think of my own. It's not that I'm inherently hateful, because the idea of saying South Africans are xenophobic, these guys are like this, these guys are like this, these ones are tribalistic, these ones. When you squeeze the resources, the first person that I begin to think of is my wife. It's not that I hate your children. If I buy my wife a rose, it's not that I hate your children. It's because I'm now put in a situation where I have to show love for my own. So I begin to show love by my family. I move from my family. I go to the next closed niche, which is probably the people of my own tribe. Why? Because I know that this food is limited. I do want to share with everyone, but the food is limited. So I go to the people of my tribe. When I move from my tribe, I move to the nation, the nationality that we've been given by the colonialists to say, you are South African, you're Zambian, Zimbabwean. I move to that family. So the idea is to squeeze the resources. The person that is squeezing the resources is one. That's why you find these countries, they're called multinational companies. They exist in all these African countries, squeezing resources out of Africa, and then we begin to fight for the crumbs that remain. So in the process of fighting for the crumbs that remain, imagine right now you're in Africa, you're a president, you're told that you're going to run at most for 10 years. Yeah. And he knows the system can only sustain him for 10 years. So what's stopping me for being corrupt for the next 10 years to feed my own? It will be stupid for you 15 years down the line and people are looking at you walking on the streets and you say you were once a president. Look at our soccer players. Many of them that have retired from the soccer scene, we meet them in the streets. No one is even celebrating them because that term that you already say, this is your term for you to shine, is what causes it. Because the economy is not open enough for people to know that they can survive inside and outside of politics. The fact that in Africa, the only way to survive is in politics, that's the breeding ground for corruption. Because I know that I'm only voted here to be here for 5 years. So what do you expect me to do? You are putting me in as the Minister of Mines for 5 years. What do you expect me to do? Definitely, I'll hook up my family with tenders. I'll hook up everyone that I know so that the day that I am moved, because you are giving me an opportunity to be successful only in 5 years. I have to build a legacy in 5 years. How do you expect me to build a legacy in 5 years when I know that after you voted me out, I become another Jack and Jill on the streets? So you create that situation. When you create that situation, the snake comes in with a promise to this guy that you voted for. We are going to make you the best. You're going to be the only black person that's going to have so much. I mean, they promise you 10 billion. 10 billion for just one individual, 10 billion US dollars is a lot of money. And if they tell you to keep quiet, ignore the mining sector. Just ignore it. We're not saying do something or just turn a blind eye. Your 10 million is there, turn a blind eye, and we continue doing what we're doing. See? Yeah. So idea of us hating each other, we would be killing each other on a daily basis. If we really hated each other, we wouldn't be tolerating the existence of each other daily. I mean, there are things that you can't stand that you kill on a daily. The people, if you can't stand cockroaches, you do that on a daily basis. If you see one, you stamp on it. But look at us. These things are sporadic. You see, one day, people remember that, you are from a different tribe. You're a different tribe. Only when a certain thing has been put in between us and has squeezed us, the resources have been squeezed to the extent that we say, where are my brothers so that I can share this with? If I don't see my brother close by, then I begin to hate the next person close to me. Not that we are inherently hating each other. We don't. It's just that the resources have been squeezed. And now that the resources have been squeezed, we're looking out for the next of kin. That's it. So we become
very
violent.
Very sad reality to say that. Basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, the problem is not the person next to me. The problem is not necessarily the president in the parliament or who's ruling the country. The problem is the system that we have been inherited that does not serve us better. Is that what you're saying?
If you say inherit, you are saying the father has died. We never inherited anything. Inheritance comes.
Because we were handed over Handed over, that's right. All right.
He handed us over an independence that he controls. If we inherited, we would have done something about our inheritance, but we were just...
Come to think about it. Come to think about it. Freedom cannot be given to you. Especially from your oppressor. Freedom cannot be given to you by your oppressor, because his only business is to oppress you and still manipulate you and get as much out of you as he wants. So these negotiated freedom, there is something about it, as you are saying, that we handed over a corrupt system that will continue to undermine black people or African people and Africa as a whole. Now, that's very interesting to think about. And you mentioned the fact that democracy does not do us any good. And I agree with you in that, because when we're talking about democracy, it's a freedom to be able to, to create different parties. For example, create different parties in the country. And when there is so many ideas and so many different parties, that is where the snake have the entrance to be able to say, if Jean Dodier does not take my deal, I'll go to Ndumiso and convince him to overthrow Jean Dodier, and then I will still have had my way. Now, we're living in the countries where you have, some country have got more than 10 political parties, all looking to govern the country. I mean, that is like an entrance for the corruptor to come in and corrupt the system. And there are so many other ways. But I see now we're discussing problems, my brother. But before we go any further on the topics, on the a few things that we've touched on, what would you say to be the solution? What would you say to be the solution? Number one, there is no freedom. There is no independence. We're not independent, because had we been independent, we wouldn't be paying homage to Britain, for instance, to France, to America, and all these. Had we been independent, our president would not be relying on the so-called investors to be able to develop the country or keep the country running, and all these things happening. I mean, democracy being as corrupt as it is, what is the solution? What kind of solutions can we start looking towards, if any?
First of all, let's understand why they wouldn't give us an independence, why they colonized us in the first place. This a war of existence. It's not. We think it's just about fairness. It's not about fairness. It's a people. It's me finding you with a full box of pizza.
All right.
You've been eating this pizza, and it's been coming to you every 3 days. You receive this pizza, and all of a sudden, I am saying to you, let us share this pizza. Sharing this pizza means I am getting a slice less than what I was used to getting.
Yeah.
So when we come with the idea of saying, can we be free? what it means is, can we have the box of pizza and hold it and decide who gets a slice or who does not get a slice? That's where the problem is. Because initially, when we're saying we want to be free, people think that we are saying we want to walk around in the streets. No, we are not saying. In essence, when the colonizer is listening to that, the colonizer is saying, you are saying you want to be in charge of the diamonds, you want to be in charge of the gold, you want to be in charge of the coal, you want to be in charge of the export market, you want to be in charge of coffee. So now, when whoever is in Europe now is about to drink coffee, they must come and ask from you if they can have coffee.
This is what we want.
This is what you are saying to them when you say you want to be free. When you stand up in the streets and say Black Lives Matter, this is what exactly that you're saying to them. You are saying you want to have your resources to yourself. and then decide what you're going to do with it. And I already have the resources. If you thought that I wouldn't fight to defend this that I am getting now, then you're not even serious about why you want to be free. Because in total, if we say we want to be free, then that means white supremacy needs to take its neck off Africa.
That's
you are
true.
saying
you cannot breathe. Yeah.
Must leave Africa alone. You are saying Africa must decide what to do with the diamonds in Africa. Africa must put a fair price on the gold, on the diamond, on the coffee, on the coltan, on cobalt, and these are the things that drive the European market. So now if we decide, Africans, that this is how much we're going to charge for copper, this is how much we're going to charge for platinum, within a year, Europe will crumble. So are we saying to the Europeans, hand us over the rope so that we can hang you? The Europeans are very smart. They've already seen why they needed to colonize us. The thinkers in white supremacy, they knew that they wouldn't have won this war if they just came in and said, let us go and attack those people. So the first thing that they needed to do was to convince their populations that black people are not humans. That's the best way for you to motivate me to go and kill, is you tell me that what you are killing is not human. So there's no consequence for you killing it. So once you have dehumanized Africans, you call them savages. You call them whatever name that you want to call them, but all these names are reducing him from the state of being human. So therefore it means if he is sitting on gold, it's not a human being that is sitting on gold. Go and push him over and take the gold. It's not a human being. So the attitude that they came with, they were taking these resources from non-humans. So there was no need for them to be remorseful about anything. You look at DRC right now, the resources that DRC has are enough. Muammar Gaddafi wrote in his gun book and said, the resources in DRC are enough to feed Africa. So if we can feed Africa and sustain Africa by DRC, how much surplus do we have as the continent of Africa? If only DRC, if we put Africa as a one country and we have DRC being in charge of all the internal resources that are needed, DRC is enough to sustain us. So that would mean the diamond coming from Kimberley, it's now for export, and we can charge whatever that we want to charge. We can build many Dubais in Africa just from DRC, because we're knowing that everything else is extras. So because they know the value of what we have, and unfortunately we don't know the value of what we have. So this is why we give away what we have easily, because we don't understand its value. By not understanding its value, we are not willing to go the extra mile for our value. We would rather follow. We would follow the what you call this, the titanium when it's already made into a Mercedes Benz. Then we follow it in Germany. But it came here. It came from here.
Here.
Yeah, we follow the iPhone in America, yet the cobalt and the coltan and all these things we mined illegally from DRC. Then we follow the iPhone, we get the iPhone, bring it to Africa, we get Samsung from China. But all the components that are mostly important in all these devices that we're using are being mined illegally from Africa. So when the real leaders stood up and they said no, they were assassinated.
Yeah.
The thinkers of white supremacy knew what Sankara was trying to do. I mean, within 8 years, Sankara moved a country from a drought-stricken country to self-sustaining and exporting food. Within 8 years, they said, no. If this mentality spreads across Africa, we are dead.
We're dead, yeah.
When Lumumba came in and said, we are going to use African laws, we are going to discard all these other laws and we're going to recreate Africa with an African ideology, they said, nah, Lumumba needs to go. When Nkrumah was speaking, they made sure that Nkrumah is hated by his own people and Nkrumah left Ghana. They made sure that Samoa eyes, because if Mozambique is left in the hands of Samora, it will be dangerous for the imperialist. So now you have president that are apologists, president that would apologize and say, okay, it's fine, let's integrate. You see the deals. I'm very much worried when we are told that an investor is coming into Africa to invest, and the only thing that is announced on our news is that he has promised us jobs. What is the difference between an 16th, 17th century king that signed a treaty that he did not understand and he signed us into being slaves? What is the difference between that and a president in the 21st century who signs a deal with an international company and he signs us, the youth, as employees? How is that different from the same concessions that were being signed in the 80s that we are told that our kings could not read? Our kings didn't know what they were signing, and they signed concessions. And after signing concessions, everyone was rounded up and made slaves. You are still signing the same thing. You are saying
the same thing. And yes, and as I'm listening to you, this comes to my mind. So you made an analogy of saying there is a snake in the house that we passed that. You say, okay, so we need to fight for the pizza. They have got the pizza in their hands. We are saying we want the pizza to hold it in our hands. But you said that it would be crazy to think that they would easily give up the pizza into our hands without a fight. Now, a question that arises is, okay, who does the pizza belong to? Who is the rightful owner of the pizza? You know, because if we know and understand who the owner is, then the owner would fight for the pizza rightfully, knowing that it is his, and would go to I mean, as far as he can go to find ways to reclaim his pizza. You see, my brother, when you bring a little bit to our biblical understanding of things, I think the problem at play here is the issue of stewardship. Because to those who read the Bible, at the beginning of the beginning, these words are heard: be fruitful and multiply, you know, replenish the earth and I mean, subdue it, rule over every living thing, you know, be fruitful and multiply. So when we read these words to those who read the Bible, what are they supposed to mean? Which earth are we subduing? You know, which dominion do we have over which earth? The earth we're talking about is the very pizza that an African man is supposed to own, but the pizza is in the hand of another who's not willing to give up the pizza. What to do? You know, what to do? And that is where we come in, because you're also touching on something whereby we say that our leaders are yes boss. You know, they say yes sir. I was talking to Mamaya Ashantewa yesterday when we were discussing something similar towards this topic, and the problem is that when these deals are made, by our leaders, they do not think about the consequences. You know, we're talking about they come in here. China is now taking over, giving money. I mean, dishing out money like nobody's business to our leaders. And you're asking a very clear question: how does that differ from one giving mirrors and gifts, coming as a missionary and doing all those kind of things? So we need to ask ourselves very pointed questions here and ask a question. Okay, fine. The question we're asking today is very simple. Is there hope for young people, for African young people? Why African young people? It's because when you look at Africa, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 70% of the population of Africa is youth. You know what I'm saying? It means that we are the future.
Yeah.
But what kind of future are we launching ourselves into? I'm saying, I'm proposing to us that if nothing is done here and now by the current youth, there'll be no future to inherit our kids, our generation, we ourselves could be enslaved by China, by America, by France, and by all these other countries. But the question is, don't we have the right to be who we are? Don't we have the right to own the land and own the resources? If so, it will not gonna be given to us without a fight, without a sacrifice. Two things: we give up and accept that we cannot, and we accept that we do not deserve, or we say, hell no, we're gonna fight. We're gonna fight for it. But I would like you to help us understand this thing. In Africa, a young person, a young man, we grow up, or rather, in ancient times, he used to be a warrior. Before he's given a house of his own, he's married and having a family of his own. He have to be tested through different challenges to come to age where he is a warrior. A warrior, his was to protect the community. If the village will be attacked by a lion, these are the people who go and fight. They will also provide us if like they will go and hunt together and bring the whole community will have food. But now, help us understand what should be the duty of a young African warrior in this era, because we're talking about young people inheriting Africa as leaders of tomorrow. But while we're still here, what should be our duty? What should be the duty of a young person, a young African warrior? What would you say to that?
Okay. I think let's begin probably with us understanding our previous leaders. I love Steve Biko a lot. Steve Biko says in his book, I Write What I Like, he says one of the main things that we need to do is to infuse the black person with his humanity, because that's exactly the first thing they took out. So you are remaining as a shell. You're just working as a black person, but you don't have your humanity. So Steve Biko says, let's infuse him again with his humanity. After he knows that he is human, he will begin to take decisions that will make us free. So you can power the hand and make us powerful and formulate an army, and we go and we fight. After fighting, are we ready to secure that independence? Look at us, we went to war. After coming back from war, who was supposed to lead us? The same guys that went to war. You don't expect a soldier to become a CEO. Already, see that's where now we got to mix up things, and now we've got cadre deployments. You've got a military guy that he has never studied medicine. He is now the Minister of Health. So what must happen now? With COVID-19 running rampant all over, wherever it is. But the thinking is not the thinking that you would want, because the leaders are the same guys that went to war. They came back, they thought going to war would actually mean running the country, because we had no ideology of what we were doing. So for the young person, we actually, if Tsietsi would wake up also, he would be disappointed at the fact that he fought for this education back then. And when he wakes up today, we're using the same education. If we only improved, we stopped using Afrikaans as the way of teaching in schools, but then the content of what is being taught. So you translate what in Afrikaans and you translate it into English, and you think that there's a change. So you begin to understand that as long as you don't change the content of education, the content of religion, the content of business, the content of politics, the content of entertainment, the content of everything that runs white supremacy is based on telling you, the black person, that you're not human. So it tells you, the black person, that you're not human, and it empowers the white youths to believe that we are not humans. So remember that you've got slave owners in the 1600s. They empower their own children to say, no, continue with this thing. So you get to the 1800s, they say, no, instead of us bringing slaves into the Americas, Why not make them slaves in their homeland? So 1888, they sit down and they're like, nah, man, Berlin Conference, let's think about this thing. It's very costly. We actually lose a lot of slaves trying to transport them into the Americas. Why not enslave them in their own backyards? So they changed the strategy. Instead of moving slaves, they come in and they make us slaves. Yeah. So as we move, we fight to say we want to vote, and they say, no, let's allow them to vote, man. Let's allow them to vote. But let us not give them the actual power. So they teach their kids that allow them to vote, but don't give them the actual power. So the next generation allows us to vote, and we think that that's an improvement. We're like, but back then we used to be slaves. Now we're no longer slaves. At least we can work. But why do you need to work in your home country? Why do you need to be working every day up at 6 a.m. so that you can come back home at 5? Every day you're doing this, every day you're not even free in your own country. And look at the persons that are actually running the show. Monday morning, they're sitting at restaurants, they're drinking tea, and we are the ones that are saving them in our own country. Because what just shifted was the idea. They gave us the idea that we are out of a prison. So what they did is they put us in a box, and it is a box within a box of a box that is within a box. So a generation of white supremacy opens one box, and then we move into that second compartment of the box, and we think that we are free. So we celebrate that freedom and we forget we are free. And this is why our parents, they don't understand why young people are standing up, why EFF is making so much noise. What do you want? Man, we never used to go to Sandton. We go to Sandton now. We pee in the same bathroom. You guys go to the same school with white people. What is it that you want? Because you have moved into a second box and you think everything is done. So because we never understood that what was taken away from us was our humanity. This is why our solutions towards colonization, imperialism, or racism are not giving us the desired results, because we never understood our initial problem. You talked about religion. Religion also was used to make sure that it solidifies.
Yeah.
It was actually the top. They call it the top quarter when they're doing nails and painting. There's that top coat where you've put in everything and then you seal it in with the top coat. So religion became the top coat of everything after they planned up this whole thing. And then they said, there is one equalizer, which is the creator. If we let these black people still think that we are equal in the eyes of the creator, it will create problems for us. It will crumble this whole system. So let us put a top coat that says, even God regards you as a cursed nation. Even God regards you as a nation underneath us. You see? So where do you run to? If God also allows the thing to be happening, where do you run to as a black child? So it's layers upon layers that they are using. You go into education, look at our science. What does science and history teach us? They teach us evolution. And we enjoy evolution. I mean, evolution myself. I was a science student. I enjoyed studying those things. And we are given a glimpse to say, and life began in Africa. But is it a proper life? Or is it a life of a primate? It's a life of an ape. When they are saying, we found the skeleton of a Homo erectus, what, they're not saying it's a human. It's not a fully developed human. So look at the theory of evolution, how it goes. It begins in Africa, close to the African is the one that is very much close to the ape. As the human being develops, he goes into Europe and it becomes lighter and wiser and godly. So the African remains closest to the monkey. So when we continue, so we continue teaching evolution, reinforcing the idea that we are the closest to the monkey. This is what they don't tell you. I know you've probably come across the theory of evolution. They've never told you which human being is the most evolved. Why? Because if they tell you that, since we are saying there is stages of evolution, they never tell you that which race is the most evolved, because they know that they've put themselves as the most evolved race of humanity. So if they are the most evolved race of humanity, We are at the bottom of the food chain. So if we are at the bottom of the food chain, if they say human beings, they're not talking to us. We enjoy and but
yes. Now, my brother, it's very interesting, as much as it is saddening to discover these truths that we are talking about, because these are the discussions that are never had in certain classrooms. History students never discuss Africa or things pertaining to Africa to these lengths. But the question is still ringing here. Now, how do we rise from this? How do we rise from this? As there's a young person watching out there, maybe not even a young person, whoever is watching out there, and who will come to this video, what kind of hope do we give them to say, okay, fine? Do we accept the idea that we are less than, that we are the slaves they have called us to be and made us to be for hundreds of years, or we are better than what we've been told that we are? Because it is important, I believe, to move from this victim mentality. Yes, indeed, we have been victimized, but how greater are we as a people? How greater are we as a people? Because I believe there is a need for restoration, to say that, okay, this has been taught to you, this has been instilled into you for years and years, from generation to generation, but you're better than that. Because the battle that we need to fight, it's not necessarily a physical fight. It's a battle of the mind. It's a battle. It's an emotional one. It's a spiritual battle. How do we rise to that height as Black people? And we're drawing towards a close, so we try to, yes, to be as fast as we can to capture the points.
So I think you've watched the movie, The Planet of the Apes. You've watched that movie, right? The Planet of the Apes, The Rise of the Apes.
Yes.
So if the ape does not change the idea that he still thinks himself as an ape, even if he rises, he's still going to get himself colonized one way or the other. So the first thing that we need to do is to infuse a Black child with the idea that, not the idea, the reality that he is human. You talked about history not being taught well in schools. It's the fact that they don't want you to know what you were, because you're not anything. You did not drop from the air. You are in a continuation of your ancestry. You're just a continuation of who they were. So what you are now is what your children are going to be in the future, unless you make a change now. So what they do, they break that connection to our past. They don't want us to know that Egypt was built by Africans. This is why there's so many theories around Egypt, because if we start believing that Egypt was built by Africans, we'll start believing better about ourselves. This is why they lie about kings. They say our kings were given mirrors and they sold countries. That's exactly what they want us to believe, so that they instill in our minds that our kings were stupid, so that there's no source to draw inspiration from. If you want to draw any inspiration, you have to look at Socrates. You have to think of Aristotle. You have to think of Pythagoras. But they will never tell you where Pythagoras learned. They will never tell you that Pythagoras was a student in Egypt. It was actually the blacks taught the Greeks, and then the Greeks went and plagiarized the knowledge that they got from Africa, and they made it their own. So after making it their own, this is why today, I think those guys survived, like they lived 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. I don't know, but to this date, we're still saying that the greatest thinkers that ever lived were these guys. But we don't know
what education came from them. They're the ones who invented the education.
You see, so this is why you can easily say to a Black child, you can't do mathematics. And the Black child believes it, because when he looks back, in his whole family, everyone failed mathematics. So he thinks, then it means it's inherent. I'm not going to pass mathematics. But if you begin to teach the Black child that mathematics was actually developed in Africa, and you begin to teach them that the Nile Valley is actually where most of this civilization that we have now was actually developed from. When you begin to teach the Black child that there were so many built kingdoms in Africa. They want to tell us that Africans had always been living in mud huts and in grassy huts and all. No, there were cities in Africa. Way before there was any city in Europe, there were many cities in Africa. They don't want to tell you in public education that the longest or the biggest wall ever built was built as the city of Benin in Nigeria. They don't want to tell you that. Because once you begin to know that, you begin to draw inspiration from your past. You begin to say, if my people 2,000 or 4,000 years ago could draw with whatever that they were using, could actually map up the galaxy and say, this star is such a name, this star is such a name, based on this star and that star, that will mean it will rain in 3 days. So once you don't translate that knowledge into actual science, they make you think that your people were very stupid. They never thought of anything. They did not develop anything. But if you look at the recent histories that are coming out, you would see that Africa was way intelligent, way before. I mean, you build pyramids as huge as the pyramids of Gaza, precisely based on the Orion, the stars in the heaven, precisely with proper calculations and all these things. How were they doing all those things? So if you begin to teach the black child that these are the people that you hail from, if they were to wake up today, would they be proud of what you have achieved? So they want us to reduce us to the idea that black history begins with colonization and slavery. That's what they want us to believe. Oh, we're just savages. And then all of a sudden the savior came and the white people came and they saved us. No, we're not that. We're way better than what we are now. So begin to teach the black child of his history of greatness. Not the history of slavery, but the history of his greatness. We begin to show him that the first writing that was done on a papyrus paper that was actually developed here in Africa. So he would know. When you begin to teach that, even in recent history, teach the black child that the history of Philip Amaguel, teach him that it was the Nigerian guy who came up with the fast computer that actually gives birth to the internet. So that when we are talking, you and I right now are talking, we shouldn't feel ashamed, because this is because of an African who actually put these things together. When you stand on a traffic light, don't think that white people are so organized. No, it was a black person who came up with a traffic light. So black children need to know that when we're using these light bulbs, black children need to know that it was Louis Latimer who actually came up with the idea of us having light bulbs. When we're talking on the telephones, we must know that it was a black child. So that all these things, you are told that it's a white person. It's Sheikh Anta Diop that says anything that is not discussed, I'm paraphrasing, anything that is not discussed freely, it actually assumes that that thing was invented by white people. So around black, it is anything that is of value, it's automatically assumed that it's a black person, it's a white person who invented it. So we don't need to.
There is this saying that Hambai, and it's in all languages that I can remember, close to 5 of them. I into Zabelung les.
Yes.
That's what we say. But there is more. So yes, my brother, continue. We are out of time. We're out of time. We need to wrap up. There's just 2 questions that I want us to address, and then we wrap up our conversation. But finish the point. Yes.
Okay, I was saying, once you do not teach that to black children that they are capable, you already put in a box that says they're incapable. So you lower the ceiling for them. So if they jump and they buy the first car, they rest because they are successful better than their predecessors. Because they only think their predecessors were actually walking. They never think that their predecessors were actually circumventing the earth long before Columbus got to America. Black people were already going to America. They don't want you to know that.
There is that gap of information that is not given to us. So
and
we
if
need
necessary, my brother, it's not by mistake. It's not by mistake. It's planned out. That's why initially I say to you, racism is not prejudice that is irrational. No, racism is calculated. So they know that if you create this gap of knowledge, let these people be disconnected from their past. They will never be successful in their future, because every generation, if you look back, you are inspired by a generation before to do better. The boundary that your father left is the one that you are pushing towards. So if your father died without a car, so when you buy a car, you think you have achieved and you rest because you think you have achieved. But if you knew that your father built a pyramid, stones are 30 tons heavy, and he piled them up into forming a pyramid without a crane, then you would know that building a house or extending your mother's house, you have not done anything. Because you can't compare to a pyramid. So already you start thinking that, say, how did my predecessors build so big structures? How did they manage to build a structure like the Great Zimbabwe without cement? How were they doing it? What technology, what ideas were they having for them to pile up stones without cement and to make sure that they stand into a building? So they take away that history from you, so that the only thing that you can think, if you're looking backwards, all that you see is white. So when all that you see is white, you begin to defend the very thing that is colonizing you. You begin to defend the education that is already set to colonize you, so that when you think colonized, all your ideas would always be colonized. This is why we don't trust our own ideas. Look at right now. COVID-19 comes in. Madagascar says, we've got Mhlonyane, guys, it's going to help us. Why are we still being locked down?
Yeah.
Because if that idea came from Europe, if someone said from Europe, we found a herb, let's open up business, give the herb to everyone else, would have been open by now. But because we've been...
There is all that we need to come out of, and yes.
That indoctrination to make us believe that we are less than human is why we cannot contribute anything to humanity. So we need to wait for master to rubber stamp everything that we do. As a country, we need to wait. What does Europe think about this? What does World Organization think about this? What does EU think about this? What does France think about this? We can't. And it's so funny that when they make up decisions, they never consult us. So why do we need them to consult them when we want to make up our own decision? But what is their hope for an African child? Yes, because you and I are alive. Because you and I are, there is hope for the future generation. Because you and I are seeing this now, we are preparing the next generation for what we have seen now. What we see now is what we are going to make sure that our next generation does not go through what we have gone through. 1970, they sacrificed themselves so that you and I can get a better education now. Now that you and I are here, it's our opportunity also to make sure that the next generation gets. It's a relay. It's a relay. It's a marathon relay. Everyone passes
the baton. We need to pass the baton. Yeah.
We have to pass it on. But what type of baton are we passing it? Are we still passing the 1976 one? Or we are making improvements to this one so that when we pass it on, it puts us at an advantage as we go towards our freedom as Black people? Are we still going to pass the same ideologies that were being put forward? I mean, right now, it's funny that 50 years down the line, people are now considering that, but Kwame Nkrumah must have been right. And it's 50 years down the line. We are actually talking about, let us unite Africa now, 50 years after Kwame had seen it. So if we do not react fast to African ideas, it will take us 50, 100, 200 years. That gives our oppressor the time to rethink his ideas. So once we have not... Okay.
Yes, we are looking at the time and then where we are right now. We are at the right time to be able to do things better than our predecessors or the previous generations. We've got the technology, we've got information. You don't have to go to school to know everything that you need to know about the history of Africa right now. We're putting information out there for everyone to learn. So it is a duty of every African to align themselves to the cause, to say that the African agenda, the African dream is the unification of Africa. Together we stand, you know, and when we stand apart, we'll crumble and fall. And there is also something that you mentioned towards when we're talking about what should the the young African warrior do right now. And then you spoke about the mind, how we need to inform ourselves, we need to infuse ourselves with knowledge, with humanity, with Ubuntu. And then you spoke also about the fact that, you know, the enemy that we are fighting, the reason why we're not our brother's keeper, it's because there is something that is causing that. Now we need to remove that. But the only thing, it begins with our us. There is an African saying that say, if the enemy, if there is no enemy within, the enemy without can do us no harm. And that is where it is. I come back to the words of Steve Biko to say that Mntomnyama ziqenye ngobuwena, you know, be proud of who you are as a person. Bring back that pride to say that I am not less than. In fact, I am actually better, considering that this is where creation took place. We're talking about the continent of Africa, the country of Africa. You know, who is closest to God even? We could go further. But that is not an exclusion of everyone around the world. But everyone should be in their place. We spoke about the analogy of a pizza in someone's hand. But who does the pizza belong to? To have dominion. Those are the kind of things that we need. I look forward to a day where Africa will be unified. No borders, just Africa, dealing with one another, traveling from Cape Town to Cairo, one with no passport, just your ID, doing business. You feel like you want to go to live in Togo. You just have to budget and go, you know. And then also to say that this whole thing of having to own that pizza and hold it into our hands, say, okay, this land is our land and the resources belong to us. You want to deal with us, we make a business deal. Right now, our leaders and other businesses, the whole business sector is falling apart because we do not make deal. We're taking orders, you know. China say, I want to come and invest. And say, when are you coming, sir? You know what I'm saying? We do not have that pride, even from our leaders, to say this is what I mean. We need the spirit of Sankara, of Patrice Lumumba, you know, to be able to say that no, this is our way of doing things. Of Muammar Gaddafi to say that we sustain ourselves, and with all those words, my brother, I must say I'm inspired by the work that you do, and actually go for another hour, but time does not allow us. For everyone who's joining us and everyone who's watching this video after the broadcast, thank you very much. There is more. At Arise Inspirations, we want to bring you real solutions to real problem, plus inspiration to be greater than you have been, to be all that you can be. My brother Ndumiso Kane, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Are there some words that you would like to say to someone who's watching right now with regards to the topic that we have talking about today? Is there hope for the African child? Is there hope for the African youth?
There's a lot that I would say, but I'll just leave you with the allegory that you must think of. Look at the jungle. It's only the animals of prey that must hit the ground running. You've never seen lions being born today and they start hunting today. But look at the wildebeest, the impalas, and all these animals of prey. They are born with the instinct of running because once they touch the ground, they are food. So Africa needs to stop this thing of being praised. That every time we want to hit the ground running, we need to hit the ground and solidify ourselves first. We need to think about decisions. We need to infuse ourselves with humanity before we even engage anyone else outside of Africa. But we are ready to run. This is why we easily get colonized, because we are ready. We want to enter. I like what it's Nyerere. Nyerere says Africa behaves like a young man who just got his gloves, the boxing gloves, and wants to get into a ring with Mike Tyson. This is just me paraphrasing his idea. He's saying, you're an African bank, you're a small bank, but already you want to compete with Barclays Bank from England. You just got your gloves, and just because you got your gloves, you think you are ready to get into a ring with Tyson. You need to sit down, be calculative, plan, because you're planning against a system that has been around for more than 500 years. They've been planning for you. And you think in one day you've already come up with an idea and you're running with it and you want to run a country with it. Africa needs to infuse itself in humanity. Africa needs to rethink its history and its future. And our future is actually tied to a history of our glory, not this one. I like it when Mutabarika says slavery is not part of African history. Slavery interrupted African history. See, colonization interrupted what we were actually doing. So we can't base our lives on an interruption. We need to rethink on what was the trajectory before
the interruption
came in between this trajectory, so that we can go back to where the ones that were before us left, and we can take over from there, not regarding this interaction. This interaction must be a lesson to us on what not to do the next time we encounter an outside.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. This is Jean Dodier, your one and only youth holistic life coach and motivational speaker. With us was our guest, Ndumiso Ken, discussing a very interesting topic, talking about Africa and the future of Africa, asking a question: is there hope for the African youth? And I believe we've done justice to the topic itself. And we would like to thank everyone for joining us. Yes, and Ndumiso Ken is still with us. So I was just thanking everyone for joining us and for being able to come together as we discuss this. Sorry, you was interrupted there, my brother.
Oh, okay. I know it's my final remarks is yes, there is hope. There is hope, my brother. The fact that where white supremacy made the mistake was to teach us their languages. Now we can read their strategy. Now they can no longer strategize without us knowing. It's our time to take advantage of that. We can communicate worldwide now. We don't need to be in the same room strategizing. We've been given this platform to make sure that our ideas can spread faster. You see how the Lives Matter protest spread faster throughout the world. It's because they made a mistake of allowing us. So this is an opportunity for us now when we have these platforms, for now, before they can close them. Let us use them, let us utilize them. But most importantly, let us suck in as much information about our people as Africans, so that when the day we are called upon to lead, you lead with knowledge. Don't just lead because you are in a position of leadership. Make sure that you are there leading with knowledge, knowing that you are creating a legacy. You see, if we infused all African child with the thinking of Sankara, that would mean that an accountant sitting in the department, wherever that department that he is in, he would think about who to give the next tender. If he thought like Sankara, he would think, do I give this tender to a multi-international company, or do I give a young African that is trying in the streets? Let's raise this guy. Do this tender belong to this one? If we are going to talk about construction, we want to construct probably a power station. How many construction companies do we have around us? Let us put them together and say, gentlemen, the 50 of you, you're going to be in charge of building us the next power station. And we give them that tender. See, so that we actually making sure that the money circulates within us. And once the money begins to circulate within us, time after time, we will start remaining to be independent from always wanting to get a loan from this other person. And if we started doing production, processing, I know we've been talking about processing for a very long time, to say, let's process our raw materials in Africa. Let everyone who buy anything from Africa come and buy finished products. There's no use for us to send in raw diamonds so that we can come and buy them from Americans. Why are we buying from an American company diamonds that are mined in Africa? Why are we
My brother, there is a lot. There is a lot, and it's so exciting. We can go on and on, but I think we need to meet again and talk about this topic further. And I give thanks for you to joining us, and we really appreciate that. And for everyone who's watching there, thank you very much. This was Jean Dodier here from Rise Inspirations, where we say empowering you to face the world. I always say that the day Africa begin to vibrate on the same frequency, we will be able to shake the world off our back. And it always starts with the knowledge, with understanding, arming ourselves with understanding, as my brother Dumiso Ken has been saying. Dumiso, thank you very much again for joining us. Until next time, with everyone on Facebook, we thank you. We thank you. Bye-bye, and have a good night. Ciao, ciao. Thank you.
Okay.